Two chimpanzees sit in the dust. One leans into the other, and slow, careful fingers begin moving through its fur, parting it, picking at it, smoothing it down. It looks like cleaning. It isn't. Almost nothing is being removed. What's happening here is far more important than hygiene. This is how they hold their entire world together. One body, one relationship, one quiet hour at a time. And it is the same problem that, millions of years later, would shape your brain, your language, and the exact number of people you are able to truly know. In 1992, a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar of Oxford University was studying brains like these, and buried in the data, he found a number, a kind of ceiling on human connection. Not 1,000, not 500, about 150, 150. That, he argued, is roughly the maximum number of people any one of us can hold in a real, stable relationship at the same time. People whose names we know, whose story we know, who we know how they relate to everyone else. Beyond that line, something quietly breaks, which raises a strange question. We carry phones that hold thousands of contacts. We have hundreds of followers, hundreds of friends. So why would the human mind come preloaded with such a small, stubborn limit? And why does that same number keep surfacing again and again in places no one expected to find it? It started with monkeys. Dunbar had noticed something odd across the primate world. The bigger an animal's neocortex, the thin, folded outer layer of the brain, the bigger the social group it lived in. Small-brained monkeys lived in small bands. Big-brained ones ran with crowds. The link was so tight you could almost read one number off the other. So Dunbar did the obvious, slightly reckless thing. He took the human brain, dropped it into the equation, and asked what group size it predicted. The answer came back, about 150. And here's the part most people get wrong. This was never about memory. You can recognize thousands of faces. The limit isn't how many people you can remember. It's how many relationships you can track at once. Not just who is this person, but how does she feel about him and what happened between them last winter and who owes whom a favor. That is the real work. Every person you add doesn't add a single thread, they add a thread to everyone. And the brain, Dunbar argued, can only hold so many threads before the whole web begins to tear. When a group grows past that point, it doesn't get stronger. It splits. But it goes deeper than a line on a graph. Because once you know the number, you start to see it everywhere. Look back across human history, and 150 keeps appearing like a watermark. The estimated size of a Neolithic farming village, the first real settlements after we put down roots and began growing grain, sits right around 150. The Hutterites, a religious farming people who have lived communally for centuries, follow a simple rule. When a colony grows too large, they split it in two, and the size at which they split, right around 150. Push past it, they found, and the bonds that held everyone quietly stop working. The community fractures into factions, and suddenly you need rules, and bosses, and enforcement to keep order. Stay below it, and you don't. Everyone simply knows everyone. Even armies stumbled onto it. The basic fighting unit, the kind of company a single captain can actually know by face, has hovered near that same figure for 2,000 years. Not because some general read a brain study, because below 150, soldiers trust each other on sight. And trust is what keeps a man standing in the line when everything in his body is screaming at him to run. Different centuries, different continents, different reasons, the same ceiling. But the strangest proof of all came from something much smaller. A pile of Christmas cards. In 2003, Dunbar and a researcher named Russell Hill went hunting for the number in modern life. Their method was almost absurdly simple. They studied who people send Christmas cards to. Think about what a Christmas card actually is. You don't send one to a stranger. You send it to someone you've decided is worth the time, the stamp, the small effort of remembering them at the end of the year. It is a quiet little vote. You still matter to me. So Hill and Dunbar tallied the cards, leaving each household, counted every single person on the other end, and added it all up. The average came back at 153. 153. In a world of telephones and cars and post offices, every tool we had ever built to reach further, people had almost perfectly drawn the same circle their Stone Age ancestors did. The technology had changed completely. The number hadn't moved at all. Which leaves the deepest question of all. Why this number? Why does the line sit exactly there? The answer takes us back to the chimpanzee and those slow fingers in the fur. For a chimp, grooming isn't grooming. It's currency. It's how you say, I'm with you. It's how you buy loyalty, how you keep the ally who'll have your back in a fight. And it costs time, real expensive time. A chimp can spend up to a fifth of its entire day picking through the fur of others, one friend at a time. That math works fine for a band of 50, but run the numbers for a group of 150 and the whole system collapses. To hold a tribe that size together by touch alone, our ancestors would have needed to spend almost half of every waking day grooming one another. Nearly half. And no one can hunt, raise children, or stay alive while spending half their life stroking someone's hair. So, Dunbar argued, evolution found a shortcut. A way to groom many people at once, without using your hands at all. We started to talk. This is his most haunting idea. That language was born not to plan the hunt or name the stars, but to replace touch, to bond. Gossip, he said, is grooming by other means. When you ask a friend how their week was, when you trade the news of who's dating whom, who had the baby, who isn't speaking to whom, you are doing with words exactly what the chimp does with fingers. You're saying, I'm still here. You still matter to me. And it is wildly efficient. You can groom a whole table of people over dinner in the time it would take to physically tend to just one, which means the thing we are taught to be ashamed of. Idle talk, gossip, small talk over coffee may be the very glue that built human society. We didn't invent language to think. We invented it to hold each other. But even words can only stretch so far. And here, the picture turns. Because the 150 was never a single flat circle. It has rings. Dunbar found that our relationships nest inside one another like ripples from a stone dropped in water. At the very center, about 5 people. The ones you would call at 3 in the morning, the ones who would drop everything. Around them, a layer of roughly 15, close enough that their death would hollow you out. Then about 50 good friends. Then the full 150. And beyond that, fainter rings still. 500 acquaintances, 1,500 faces you could just about put a name to. Each ring is about 3 times the size of the one inside it, and each one costs you less. More people, thinner love, and here is where honesty matters, because science is never as tidy as a good story. In 2021, a team of Swedish researchers reran Dunbar's original calculation with newer data and sharper tools. And the clean number fell apart. Depending on the method, they got 50 or 70, or figures so uncertain they were almost meaningless. The exact value of 150, they argued, was never as solid as the world had decided it was. And yet, this is the part that survives. The shape never disappears. Run the data on phone calls, on emails, on online networks, on soldiers and villagers and Christmas cards, and the same nested rings keep coming back. 5, 15, 50. The number on the very outer edge may blur, but the structure, the fact that your love arrives in layers and that there is a floor and a ceiling to how much of it you can give, that holds. Because the real limit was never just the brain, it was time. And that is the one thing the modern world keeps trying to sell you a way around. Your phone tells you that you have 2,000 friends, but you don't. You have 2,000 names scattered across the outer rings. The 500 and the 1,500, the acquaintances and the half-remembered faces. The phone didn't expand your circle. It just made the far edges visible and then quietly convinced you they were the center. The inner rings haven't moved. They can't. They aren't built out of memory. They're built out of hours, and you only ever have so many. Researchers estimate it takes around 50 hours of time together to turn an acquaintance into a casual friend, and closer to 200 to make someone truly close. That time has to come from somewhere, which means every friendship is a quiet act of subtraction. Every person you pull toward the center gently pushes someone else toward the edge. You have felt this happen. The old friend you slowly stopped calling. Not because you stopped caring, but because someone new walked in and the room was already full. That isn't coldness. That is the system doing exactly what it was built to do. So the next time you scroll past 1,000 faces and feel a strange, quiet loneliness in the middle of all that connection, understand what it really is. It isn't that you know too few people. It's that you know too many at the wrong distance. The ache isn't emptiness. It's a 50,000-year-old circle, straining against a number it was never meant to hold. You were never built to be loved by everyone. You were built to truly know about 150, and to keep a small fire burning for the 5 at the very center. Those slow fingers in the fur became words. The words became names. And out of 8 billion people on this planet, your mind still quietly chooses a handful to carry. So choose them with care. Call the 5, and forgive yourself for the rest. That was never a failure of your heart. It is the shape of it.